men call it progress.
Great saints and sages down through the ages have an intangible but tangible vibration and consciousness that we can draw. We just need the message of self-realization, is the message of ownership.
You're a man, no passive stone.
So today we wanted to do some readings from the last hours and days of the mortal lives of these two great souls, Swami Sri Yukteswar and Paramhansa Yogananda. And it fits interestingly, I think, into our subject of common sense and self-realization. We live in a time when personal liberties and freedoms are in the ascendant, and that's a wonderful thing, as opposed to the way it used to be long ago. And yet we see, a few of us were chatting about, I've lived long enough at this point to have seen in various ways, basically, spiritual teachers, and Jesus Christ says, beware of schmucks. I think, was it schmucks? I think it was. Anyway, and so we have to own our own lives. That's really the message. A few of you went on pilgrimage, for example, to Italy recently, and I've gone on various pilgrimages over my lifetime, and one person will go to this one holy place and say, oh, that was so awesome, and the next person didn't feel a thing. Or with respect to some spiritual teacher, I remember Padma and I had a sort of a private satsang with one world-famous spiritual teacher, and frankly, we came away not feeling a thing, and less than a thing. But, we just have to own our experiences. I think of those TV and evangelists who have lots of money and big house and lots of cars, and, say what you will, but there are people who need to hear that prosperity gospel, and what's it for? It's for people who need perhaps to put out some energy in life and gain some skills and self-confidence, whatever it might be. There's something for everyone, you see. But the problem we run into is idol worship is the bane of religion, We project onto other people what we ourselves haven't yet owned. And this is the beauty and the power of meditation, is that we go within. Because whatever we might experience, it may or may not be true. Padma and I, like many others, friends of ours over the many decades, and when we did the kind of work we did, would go to our teacher, Swami Kriyananda, and I remember for myself anyway, and I know Padma too and others, but I'd go in there filled with problems, with the work I did for the community in California in those years. And I'd sit down and he'd be writing something. He wrote all these books, or writing music. He wrote all this music. And he'd say, just a minute. And then he'd stop and he'd sing me a song, And by the time he was done singing or reading a passage from one of his books he was just writing, he said, well, how can I help you? And I'd think, gosh, I don't remember why I came here. And so was it me projecting onto him, or was it his vibration? I'll tell you what I think, but it's just what I think. It doesn't matter. I've often said that if an avatar ran me over with a truck, I wouldn't know the difference. Who am I to judge anybody else or anything else spiritually? We live in an age where we need to claim our ownership. And that ownership is far greater. Like in what was that story of the prince and the pauper? Or you have these stories throughout history where the king goes out or whatever, they think they're the pauper, and then they wake up and they realize they're a king. That's our story, you see. And when I think of, by their fruits ye shall know them. Okay, you could have, a worldwide, I know spiritual teachers have millions of followers. But when I look into their eyes, I'm not interested. But it doesn't matter what I think. I'm just not interested. You see what I mean? Do you see the difference? I might have an opinion, and indeed I do. I'm full of them, okay? But it doesn't matter. We've got to own our own realities and our own responses to things that may or may not be true. And so when I think of the fruits, as Jesus said, by their fruits ye shall know them, when I think of the lives of Sri Yukteswar and Yogananda ji, as we are honoring today, I could talk about all the things they did. I could talk of, like with our friend and teacher and founder of Ananda, all the books he wrote and all the... Even he said, I don't really care. I said, if I could be known as anything, I want to be known as a disciple, a good disciple. You see what I mean? It all points inward. And so when I think of what are their fruits, well, I'm a fruit and a nut. I'm the fruit of their labors. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for their lives. Do you see what I'm saying? And so I see so often in religion, so often among sincere devotees, but so much imagination. I love imagination. I'm Irish. I love poetry. Right, Aditi? Right. But an imagination created this world. So I don't knock it at all. Okay? But here today we have a different lesson. And that lesson is self-possession, self-realization. And for all the wonderful things that I could have made a talk about, what these two great souls have done, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the transformation, not just me, obviously, the transformation that many souls, countless souls, have experienced through their lives, through their work, through their vibration, as we put it. That's what really counts. You know, because when we, as the Christians and others like to say, when we, kick the bucket and go up there and old St. Peter's in front of the gates and he's got this big book in front of him. What a bunch of... Anyway, that's all that counts. Remember the beautiful parable where Jesus, talks about, and anyone that you helped, that you fed, that you visited in prison, clothed, gave food to, you gave to me. But do we realize that? I mean, I think it's wonderful, all the humanitarian work that gets done, even including by churches. But is it just an excuse to distract ourselves from the indwelling presence within ourselves and within that person? Or are we trying to save the world? Good luck. And so this is the message of self-realization, is that we need to become, what is it we used to say about Gandhi? He never said this, by the way, but we like to say that Gandhi said, you have to be the change that you seek in others and in the world. Well, he might as well have said it. He did in a million different ways, didn't he? And so do all the great wise people, saints and sages, is that we have to become that. They serve as examples. They serve as models. And yes, because this world is, as science alone tells us, it's nothing but vibration, magnetism. It's all empty space. We don't even know what it is anymore. We're completely lost. It's consciousness. And so, yes, great saints and sages down through the ages have a intangible but tangible vibration and consciousness that we can draw, because we are not who we think we are. But never mind that. For now we think we know who we are, and we have to own it. That's really the message that great saints down through the ages tell us. But that message was not accessible in the last period of time. That message could not be understood to go within. And so we had ritual and worship and all this sort of outer stuff, which has its place. We're not that different yet. But in a higher age, we won't even need places like this, because we will worship in the only temple there is, our own hearts. This is the message that has been seeded at this point, really for future generations, because there's very few people out there in the world who are even ready for this message. But the great ones come, and the fruits by which they know, Jesus came and he paid the ultimate human sacrifice, as it were, for the message he brought. Because what the Gita talks about here is that realization is a message that goes beyond words and scripture. It's a power, it's grace, okay, that uplifts us into a state beyond the ego. We have to work for that state. Of course we do. And to the skeptics and the scoffers, okay, fine, it's a material world and so forth. That they can go to the TV and evangelic, whatever you call those guys, and they can get a big house and a car and stuff like that. And that's fine for them at that point. So we, sort of like our presidents, we get what we deserve, I'm sorry to say, but let's not go down that path. We just need the message of self-realization is the message of ownership, the message of becoming real, having common sense, of doing the work. Because nobody, that's why the path of meditation, it's got more people, but it's still relatively few, because you can't be saved by the blood. You got to do it yourself. You got to close your eyes and sit still and offer yourself inwardly, and no one's going to do that by signing a document or giving you a plenary indulgence or what have you. We all want somebody else to do it for us, the government or this, that, and the other thing. And so the inner path is in some ways for the future, but we desperately need it now. It is in harmony with the consciousness of our age, which is mostly egoic. So how do you lift an age in which we have such chaos and such conflict and such polarity and such corruption and so forth? By saying, who are you? Who am I? As Jesus said, who do men say I am? I'm much more than I appear in form and in personality and all the junk I carry around. That's a powerful message. But it's not an easy message for most of us. It's so much easier to look outside ourselves. It's so much easier to blame and this and that. I understand that, of course I do. I'm not any different than anybody else. But still, this is a wonderful message and a wonderful example.
Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all.